Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, depending on where you're from. I want to welcome everyone to day 3 of TMF week, the second session of the day. Super excited to have everyone here. I just want to go over a few quick housekeeping rules before we get into the session with our two amazing speakers today. All sessions are going to be recorded, so don't worry. You don't have to ask us in the chat whether or not everything's going to be recorded. Everything is recorded. All of the attendees are also going to be receiving a certificate of attendance for the entire TMF Week conference, not just for the session. All of the questions, and I'm sure everyone is going to have some amazing questions, are going to be answered at the end of the presentation in a Q&A session. And we'll be having network breaks at the end of every presentation. So a really great opportunity to speak with some of your colleagues around the world and learn about some of their best practices when it comes to TMF. Just to quickly go over what the timeline for today's session is, we are going to do a 30-minute presentation, followed by a 15-minute Q&A, and then we'll be introducing the next session. And of course, after that, we'll be having the network break. So without further ado, I would like to quickly introduce our session and our speakers. Today, we are going to be talking about the use of AI in transforming unstructured data in TMF migrations. And I'm joined today by Morten, Nielson, and Nick Larsen from Epista. So I will hand it off to them to introduce themselves and to get the session going. But yeah, super excited.
All right, thank you, Aviv, for the introduction. So yeah, today's session will discuss and share more insights on how to use AI in transforming unstructured data in TMF migrations, and more specifically in this use case here, or this case here, come to in terms of classifications. So, but we'll start off by introducing ourselves. My name is Morten Nielson. I'm a principal consultant at Epista Life Sciences. I work with pharma and biotech companies doing IT implementation, business processes, and migration. Prior to joining Epista, I spent 20 years in pharma, working in the eTMF space, in the clinical organization, heading up various teams for both specialists and application management. Hand over to my colleague, Nick.
Yeah, thank you, Morten. So my name is Nick Larsen. I'm the director of our technical services at Epista. We do a lot of exciting stuff. We do migrations, data science, AI projects as well. I come from a diverse background in IT and has been working with Epista for the last 9 years in different roles, and excited to present here today.
And as you may be able to tell from our accent, we are not native English speakers, so it's not your internet connection if we come across a bit slow. So it's just due to our accents, but we hope to be able to bring the message across to you anyways. So, but without further ado, we'll dive into the session here today. So we'll talk about some of the challenges with unstructured content and data, how we can leverage the technology to organize this unstructured content, and in particular, how we can apply AI to modern document management systems, while at the same time having a keen eye on both security and privacy during these data integrations. We'll move a little bit beyond this as well and discuss some additional use cases where AI can be applied. And finally, towards the end, we'll show you a roadmap as to how you get started with the use of AI in one of these use cases here. So, but starting off with some of the challenges with unstructured content and data, engaging with clients, we find that there are at least 3 main challenges that occur. One relates to the data quality that That's key in order to get success with using generative AI. So it's also important and can be a challenge to set the right expectations and know your limitations, even when working with GenAI. And then it can be a challenge sometimes to know how to start and where and how to do it. This is new and advanced stuff, but how do you really get started? And we have use cases where we are capable of doing this in less than 100 hours. So a couple of concepts as well that I want to explain. So dark data is a term that we use here, and that refers to data that has for instance, data files that has no extension. So from legacy systems, for instance, you don't know exactly if it's a document, if it's an image, if it's a database file or an email file. So that can be referred to as dark data, and that's something that can require significant internal resources and expertise in order to sort of uncover and evaluate the content of this dark or hidden data. Unstructured data, which is what we'll focus more on here today, is data that is readable, so to say, but is not necessarily tagged with any types of metadata or other descriptive information so that it can be easily classified. So that's what we'll zoom in on here today. Starting off with a few of the typical use cases outside of the class, or that also addresses classification needs. For instance, when you do mergers and acquisitions of companies, compounds, or established products, you often need to bring across a pool of documentation or content, and you would, in many situations, migrate that into your existing, more modern document management systems. And there you could leverage GenAI to bring that data across. The same applies if you are improving your own in-house systems, so establishing new, more modern systems. Maybe you are bringing files across that come from like a standard file repository like Windows Explorer or SharePoint, where the data hasn't been tagged with anything. So it's basically just the file name you know and the extension, but you don't really know anything about the data or the content. And lastly, a typical use case could be, which maybe goes a little bit beyond what we are actually addressing here today, but is in terms of data analysis, doing data mining and questioning, so interrogating your data or your content that can generate insights for you, and GenAI can help you in evaluating and summarizing the content of your data and define what you actually have, so that you may be able to set new ambitious targets or know or have more insights on your historic data.
Yeah, so maybe I can start this slide off, Morten. So to utilize this sort of cutting edge technology and generative AI, there's a lot of hype around that. You need to have some prerequisites in place. So you need to decide on the infrastructure setup. Are we going for a cloud-based setup, or are we utilizing on-premise models? A thing that also speaks into the infrastructure setup is probably security. So what type of data are we working with? What type of data are we processing? If it's really sensitive data, we might utilize an on-premise setup. If we already have a platform like Microsoft Azure and we are utilizing the services in there, could be optimal to use some of these cloud services. And the thing we are discussing today will also be based on a Microsoft Azure setup and the OpenAI service residing in that. And I guess most of you have now tried ChatGPT, or at least have heard the name before. And this is sort of the underlying models we can utilize in Microsoft Azure. The context of how you utilize these services and the output of this is also very important. Today we will be speaking about the classification of documents, and that is typical part of a process, a migration process that is also typically a validated thing. So here we are using the GenAI capabilities as a drafting tool. But if you are building applications based on this that will take decisions and so on, you might want to raise your level of compliance and then validation needs, basically. So context is quite important. What's also important is the good data quality. Even though GenAI and AI has great capabilities and possibilities, it's not a magic wand. If you have bad data, you will probably get a bad result with the process that you're trying to fix, basically. So what's also important is define the metrics, what's good enough for this process that we're doing. And in migrations, it's fairly important to do that, and I'll show that in the process later. But maybe Morten, you can speak into this example we have seen from a customer with a migration setup.
Yeah, so we have had a real life example where we were tasked with processing of more than 230,000 files across 5 directories. And maybe the expectation was that initially was that everything could be processed, but there were a number of these files that couldn't, at least initially, be processed. So 14% of these files were of an unknown type. So as I mentioned before, the dark data. So nobody really knew what they were. 73% of it was actually capable of being received by the future system of storage. And but of these, you could say that 44% of the files were PDF files that could potentially be scanned and read by the GenAI. But it turned out that more than half of those were actually not text-based files, but were images scanned or could be handwritten documents. So in essence, as Nick just mentioned, GenAI is not a magic wand that can just magically transform or extract and classify all these 230,000 documents into something that can be readily filed in your system of choice. You really need to set the right expectation and understand how much of this can actually be brought across, and then assess what do you want to do with the stuff that's not immediately that can't immediately be processed, like applying other image technologies to extract text layers from documents to add that to the pile of documents that can be extracted.
Yes, exactly, Morten. And what we also see here is that we shouldn't, when we do a migration and we try to apply these GenAI tools on top of that in terms of classifying documents, we shouldn't expect a full coverage due to various reasons. Some might be that there's not enough text to generate a context of this document. Could be templates, could be, I don't know, tables, and all of this could also be files that cannot be read, or database files, or files that has 0 kilobytes size and so on. So even though our customers say they have good data quality and the repositories are up to date and so on, we often see that there is documents that we cannot process for various reasons. So as a benchmark, 70 to 80% coverage is really good. So this is what you could expect. Yeah, because the last 30 to 20% might be files that we cannot process. If you want to bring your files anyway and you want to classify it, we could put a sort of a other classification on that, and then say we know we have a task to do. When the files end up in the system, we can either leave them in this other classification bucket, or we can look into doing it manually if we have some important documents in there. It's also important to say that when we utilize these tools, these can be applied to text-based documents, because in order for the model that we're using to do this classification, it needs text to provide some context and provide classification based on the content. So if it doesn't have text-based content, it's probably difficult to classify. That being said, we can utilize these different tools. So you can put a vision on top of these PDF documents that's scanned or handwritten, and we can extract text from that as well. But yeah, it's about identifying these different types of documents that we need to process and make a good plan for how we do this. So looking into some of the obvious limitations is that we need, for basically whether it's doing data science or working with AI tools to classify stuff, we need a good data quality. Data needs to be available for the model to access it. I will speak a bit more about the black box issues, but we see when a company acquires another company, they typically receive a lot of documents from that acquisition that they need to bring in. Some of these documents might be 10, 20 years old, and all the people knowing about these documents might have left the company. So, but this is also one of the cases where we can apply these tools to give us what we call data insights and sort of remove the documents from this black box. A decision of choosing the infrastructure is also quite important in terms of if you process documents in a Azure service, it tends to have a cost per document or per request. And if you have it on premise, of course, there's a smaller cost with that. So it's also a decision that needs to go into when you're defining your requirements for a solution like this. Yes. If we look into this classification process using GenAI, we use for most of our customers, they have a Microsoft platform, which means that they already have an Azure setup. Plugging into that Azure setup and utilizing the OpenAI service. So basically the models that lie beneath ChatGPT, we can actually have a quite quick implementation time in this and start utilizing this engine or model for various purposes. For this process, it's actually quite strong. So what we do is that it actually mimics a human process. So opens the documents, extracts the content, and then using this GPT model to summarize the content. As a prerequisite for this task, we need to analyze the document quality and identify the document types to be able to extract content. So Word files, PDF files, Excel files, database files, and so on. So we need to do some filtering on that. So we don't apply this tool to files or documents that doesn't make sense, basically. So once we go from dark data to data insights, we can actually move a bit further and we can instruct the model with some good instructions in terms of how to interpret this data. And we can also take the classification model for the target system from the target system and use that as input to the model. Then we basically open the document, extract the content, and then process that content and ask the model to classify this document based on the instructions and the target classification model. So this this brings us from data insights into data structure, basically. And the output of this could be an Excel or a CSV file, where you have the file name, you have the classification type, and you have all of the information around the document type, file size, and all of this good stuff. But we can also ask the model to give a reasoning why this particular document landed in this particular classification. So that's really good for the future process. And this is also how we can sort of adjust the model and the instructions to give us a good output. So this is how an infrastructure setup could look like. So the infrastructure running in the Microsoft platform, Azure, and utilizing the OpenAI service. Then on top of that, we have the different applications we can put on, and we can basically build as many applications as we want. For this auto classification, we feed the model with the classification model from the target system, good description and instruction. If we have documents residing in the target system already that is classified, we can also utilize that information as part of the context for the model. The output would then be this CSV or Excel file. We can actually also utilize for creating documentation. This tool that we have here is part of an ERP implementation. So we actually connect direct to Azure DevOps, fetch the process description and the format of the test cases and the documents we want to produce. And then the output is test scripts and work instructions and all of these things that you need to validate your system and maintain a validated state. And in these ERP implementations, you usually have around 1,000 to 2,000 test scripts and work instructions and all of this, so it can save a lot of time. Yes, so if we look at how could we apply this around our document management system, we spoke about these migrations and data insights, auto classification. We can also utilize the model to do metadata extraction. Also, in terms of documentation, we can create test scripts, we can create work instructions, we can also create validation plans, traceability matrix, all of this good stuff that usually takes a lot of time, at least a draft version to this. Of course, we need some human interaction in terms of completing this and verifying that it's in good quality. Then we also have some supporting tools around this. Could be automatic periodic review of your documents on a regular basis. You don't have to wait 2 to 3 years to do this with if you have an automatic setup. So making sure that your documents live up to the updated regulations and requirements from the business and so on. Could also be doing a automatic review of the audit log, making sure that you don't have suspicious behavior, people downloading a lot of documents to take somewhere else and so on. And I think, Morten, you have a small case on that from a customer.
Yes, we have a true example of that. So we were asked to do an audit trail review, not doing it with generative AI, but out of the blue asked to do audit trail review on a document management system. And we found that when we did the review that one of the employees had downloaded the full set of QMS documents, so all SOPs, work instructions, forms and templates, and this employee was about to leave a couple of days later. So we were, of course, notifying IT security, who was able to take action on this, but this was a complete coincidence that we picked it up. And GenAI could really be leveraged to do this on a much more frequent basis to avoid situations like that.
Thank you, Morten. And I think some of the questions that we get from our customers when we speak about these type of solutions is because this is a different way of working. You can I don't know if you can call it disruption, but it is in that area, right? And so how can we make sure that this AI engine doesn't communicate outside of our premises, share data, and all of this bad stuff that we don't want? If you run this in any cloud platform setup, you can isolate the network, you can set up firewall rules and security groups and utilize private endpoints and so on. So it's fairly easy to set this up, and it's fairly easy to trace and make sure that this is secure. The other question that we also get is how can we make sure that this AI engine doesn't alter the documents when it's processing those? So that's fairly easy as well. So you can put it in a read-only access repository. Then this engine cannot do anything to the document other than read it. You can put checksums and hashing before and after to make sure that it's identical still after this process, and you can do version control and so on. So there are good measures to keep this in control.
Yes, and so before we get to the end of the session here, just want to elaborate a little bit more on a couple of other scenarios apart from classification where the AI tool can be used. So, for instance, in the automatic periodic review that we touched upon briefly just before, but as part of that process, you need to assess a number of different things, and some of them are listed here. It's not everything you do in periodic review, but you need to, for instance, if it's a TMF, maybe you want to assess that there hasn't been access to unblinded documents by individuals who shouldn't be able to access those. You need to look at the audit trails as well. You need to perform access management, ensure that people have the right level of access and people that have left the company don't have access anymore, or external people for that matter. And you need to, as in the example I mentioned just before, maybe monitor the download frequency and what happens in terms of users providing or performing downloads. And the beauty of applying AI is that it gives you a frequency button that you can turn up so that you can do this much more frequent than what you would otherwise do. Maybe some companies do it once a year, twice a year, but here, in essence, you could do it on a daily basis if that's what you wanted, or whatever frequency you desire. Another use case where the AI can be applied is if you have a situation where you have a regulatory hold, could be over a patent dispute or something like that, where you need to really retain any documents relevant to a specific product or compound across all systems in a company. So you could have the GenAI search and list all the relevant documentation. So from your eTMF system, your regulatory system, quality systems, contract repositories, ERP systems, and I'm sure that there's a range of other applications or systems that would be relevant. And you could also make sure that any communication around this specific product or compound is tagged and listed, so that those who are in the legal team involved with this can much more easily get a list of any relevant documentation that might be useful in your patent dispute. So this would otherwise be a very cumbersome and manual exercise across these number of applications.
Then I think we have this last slide, and I see we have 1 minute left, so I'll do it quick. But we've seen with customers that they have fuzzy AI strategies that goes on for 5 years, and it's difficult to know how to get started. So I think a good way forward would be to define good and clear objective. What is it we're trying to achieve? Identify the processes where you have the biggest time consumers and a lot of manual labor, and see if you can identify these quick wins that will bring a lot of value. it's about choosing the right tools and the partners and the models and all of this that goes into the solution that you want to do. Pick a pilot project to do. Keep it small to start with. Train your members in terms of this as well. And once you have proved your value with these small pilot projects, scale and optimize, and make sure that your employees has this AI mindset and know where to bring the good ideas for keeping these, to optimizing the process and continues to develop these use cases. Yes, I think just in due time. So yes, let's.
The exact right time. Thank you, Morten. Thank you, Nick. That was a very, very interesting and insightful presentation. We got some really awesome questions from the audience. The first question that I'm going to ask is, how long does it take to implement something like this?
Yes, so if you take the case where we have Microsoft and the company is utilizing that platform already and has an Asia setup running, it's actually fairly easy. It takes around, 30 hours to set up and start up the service and make the connections that you need to make. So it doesn't have a long and very time cumbersome work to do this. It's actually just turning on the service in Asia and getting that integrated with what you want to do. And the beautiful thing about this is that once you have turned on this service and engine, you can build incredible applications on top of that.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that answer. Anything else anyone wants to add, or we'll move on to the next question here. So, can ChatGPT be used for end-to-end data mapping for migration from an eTMF?
Yeah, that's difficult questions or good question with a lot of parameters to take into context. If you have a real structured source and a real structured target and a good data quality, yes, you could do that. That's rarely the case that we see. But yes, and this is also, we work with these type of generative AI components to help us in the migration process, because they can bring a lot of value in saving a lot of time, both on our side, but also on the customer side.
Okay. Next question. What is the process for validation certification that the documents files contain the exact original information, and what is the average timeline to do these processes?
Yeah, so if I understand the question correct, it's about sort of keeping the document and the content intact. And yeah, basically we only extract content, so we can basically set it up in a read-only mode, so the documents aren't changed or touched. We just extract the content, we generate the metadata or the classification or whatever we need, and we return that in a Excel sheet that we can then use for the migration. And I think in terms of the timeline, it really depends on how many documents you can do. But I think we're working on a project right now where we have 3.5 million documents. And what we have done is we have set up different agents so we can run processes in parallel, meaning that we can do, I think it was 50 documents per 30 seconds or something like that. So we can process fairly quickly, and we can of course extend that these agents to work faster.
Okay. So the next question we have is, how can you make sure that an overdependence on GenAI does not affect the quality of TMF migrations? Are there protocols that can be followed or training sessions available to share with the team?
Yeah, it's also a good question with, I would say, different angles to it in terms of the technical dependency and the verification of data. Normally, in our processes, this is used as a drafting tool. So the data goes into a validated process. We verify, we test, and all of this. So this is sort of how it's in control. And in terms of depending on the output, this is, these tools are needed when you work with millions of documents, basically. So I guess you in some sort will be depending on those type of systems when you do big migrations, because these amounts of documents cannot be processed manually in a timely fashion, I would say, because customers usually have they have an urgent need to get the documents in, right? If they have purchased a product or a company, you need to have the documents in and in compliance to operate in a good fashion.
Okay. Excellent. And what are the privacy concerns, or what privacy concerns are there with entering documents, data into outside AI systems such as Microsoft, ChatGPT, etc.?
Yeah, also a good question. And I would say don't ever process sensitive data through ChatGPT. But in terms of Microsoft, and this was the game changer for us, is that Microsoft created this OpenAI service, meaning that if you already are on a Microsoft platform, you have measures in place to operate on that platform, right? So you are sharing data already. Microsoft cannot access your data and so on. So there are measures in place for that. So it's just about utilizing the services within your Microsoft instance. And this means when we do this with customers, we don't have a service on our side. We implement everything in their Asia instance. So data stays within their premises, basically. So if you are running a Microsoft platform, you will have things in place to discuss and address the data issues and all of this.
Okay, fantastic answer. Of the files that are filed utilizing AI, how is the audit trail of those documents impacted, if any?
Yeah, as I said, this is a drafting tool, so it's basically mimics the human process of doing this. So if you have a million documents that you want to classify and extract metadata from, you can deploy, 10 student assistants and ask them to do that and put it in an Excel sheet. And it's basically what we do here. So this is also what we had in the presentation, where context is important. Because if you produce an output that's part of a validated process that will be tested and verified and all of this, whether you produce this manually or with a tool, could also be Excel, and you apply some rules to that, you don't really have sort of audit trails around that, right? It's just generating or drafting information around the document. So we don't really do anything to the document.
Okay. Well, that's all the time we have for the question and answers. There are several other questions and answers, and questions that have been asked by the audience, and we'll send you those, and hopefully they can get a response in writing at a different time. But really, really great questions from the audience, and really great and insightful answers from the two of you. So with that, I want to thank the two of you for the great presentation. I want to thank the audience, and we will see everyone in the lounge.